Hey guys, what's up? It is week 393. Mr. Parka feeling a little under the weather. Yeah, just not feeling great, so excuse King, back in full swing. I have a correction. Last week when I was talking about A Quiet Place, day one, for some reason I was like, Clifton Collins. That guy looks so much like Clifton Collins to me in my head. Which he probably doesn't even, and the guy's 30 years old. Clifton Collins probably like 60 at this point. That I just was like, oh, it's Clifton Collins. Dude, what is wrong with me? I said that guy was Clifton Collins. Clearly wasn't. Looked like him to me. Just immediately thought it was him. Like, even though the time doesn't line up. That's a correction. I'm just getting old. But let's hop into the reviews. The first one up is Tomie from 1998. This is a famous Japanese horror franchise. Basically, this movie spawned 8 or 9 sequels, all made over a periodic. I think the last one maybe was 2011. Maybe there's one newer than that. But this was the first time watch for me. Now, J-horror, it's always been kind of like having a little resurgence, I guess, with a lot of the releases and stuff like that. But it's always been pretty popular, I think, especially when it came out, and with the things like Ringu and Ju-on and all that kind of stuff. But this one was 1998, which is kind of early in that swing of things. I know Cure came out in 1997, but this one is almost like a bridge. It does feel like some of the weirdo kind of Japanese horror films from the 90s and late 80s that were not direct-to-video, some of them were, but in that kind of vein. But Tomie is a wild and great story. I believe it was based off of, wasn't it a manga? I think it was a manga, if I'm remembering correctly. Again, scatterbrain. I love when I'm sick, because then I have all the excuses in the world why I don't know what I'm doing. But I felt great last week, and I still thought that guy was Clifton Collins, so who knows. So the plot of this one is a wild one. We have this girl who suffers from amnesia. She's in, I think she's going to college now. She has kind of a boyfriend that fools around on her, not a great guy, in kind of a band, works at a restaurant, an Italian restaurant of all things, a pizza place in Japan. And there's this kind of oddball, kind of weirdo character running around with a patch on his eye. And he is carrying what appears to be a head in his bag. And the head is sentient. We see it in the very beginning in the bag. And we're like, what in the world is going on? Enter a detective who is interested in our lead character with amnesia and starts to question her doctor, saying, I think that this girl came from this school where there is a mysterious character of interest that keeps disappearing. She's claimed to have been murdered. Her name is Tomie, but no one ever found the body. And as it progresses, we learn that the person in the bag is Tomie, and they start as a head, they turn into a toddler, and eventually they're full grown. And the backstory on Tomie is kind of wild and weird, and she has a power over men, and it creates all these kind of people going completely nuts and killing each other over her. And everywhere she goes leaves a horrible kind of streak of bloody violence. And that's kind of what we're at here in Tomie. The characters are well established, the reveals are good, the story moves along, and we learn how all the people are tied together and everything like that. And history kind of repeats itself in a lot of aspects. I love the acting, I love the style, the ending is weird and wild. It's the perfect mixture of kind of like newer J-horror and then kind of the old school kind of weird, kind of nasty, wild stuff that like even somebody like I wouldn't call it Evil Dead Trap, but in a way it is kind of like that, the moving head and things like that. Or, Tsukamoto, even being with like, Haruka the Killer, which I love. Haruka the Goblin, not the Killer. But, just weird stuff like that. Body horror, strange things like that. There's a really funny scene where the head eats a roach and throws it up. But anyways, I love this movie. It's a good mystery. It's a good horror film. A lot of horror films kind of tend more towards the mystery, and they don't have enough horror. They don't have enough supernatural elements to them. This one has both. And, again, I love horror that has a mystery that you figure out what the hell is going on, as well as when you're the audience, too. Like, the next movie I'm going to talk about is a perfect example of that, as long as it goes horror enough. A lot of gialli, which I do love almost all of them, even if they're more police procedural, thriller, less horror, a lot of those never dip their toes into the horror genre. They just kind of strictly stay in that police procedural format. And in my heart, I am a horror guy, so I do love when they do tip into horror more so, and Tomie is through and through a horror film. Excellent movie. As far as the special features are concerned, we of course have it in 1080p finally, original lossless 5.1 and 2 stereo. Now, subtitles, brand new audio commentary by critic, Japanese film expert Amber T. She's also on the Noroi, I think, supplemental feature. It's a Girl's Word, brand new interview with director Otaro Okawa. I'm not going to be able to do this right now being sick. Scream Queen, brand new interview with actress Maimi Nakamura. From manga to screen, brand new interview with producer Mika Heiko Hirata. Archival making of documentary, Tomie trailers, image gallery, illustrated collector's booklet featuring new writing by Zach Davidson and Eugene Thacker, reversible sleeve original, and newly commissioned artwork by Sarah Deck. So great artwork there, great movie. I cannot believe I didn't see this Tomie movie. There was a DVD box set that I have of the first like 5 or maybe more, and then I picked up another set of like 2 more that came there. So like I think when I look at the sets, and I missed them when they came out, because in the early 90s, late 90s, I was like so into American horror, like old school stuff, like Italian stuff, that I was like, American and Italian and stuff like that. But I never wanted to dive into the Japanese stuff, because at that time they're all getting like American remakes, and I was just like, I don't even want to open that can of worms. The American remakes look like shit, so I just assumed, being a 12-year-old kid, I didn't know any better. But I was 100% wrong. Looking at that, like, this, I also was intimidated by the 9 movies that's in the series. So finally, hopefully they release the others. I'd really like to check some of them out. This one was great. Love it. Okay, next up is Noroi the Curse from the J Horror Rising set. We've covered this entire set now, with the last one being Noroi the Curse, directed in 2005 by Shiriyashi, I believe it is, Koji Shiriyashi. And he also directed Carved, Flipmouth Woman, Grotesque, A Record of Sweet Murder. He just has a slew of great movies. Cult. He's just a phenomenal director, and he really tackles that mockumentary kind of, I wouldn't say found footage, but mockumentary kind of stuff at like an expert level. So Noroi, when we did 2005 for 22 Shots, we all did our top 10s, watched a bunch of movies, and this ranked as my number 3. It was competing with movies that I had seen years and years and many times, and some heavy hitters, and it lost to 2 of my all-time favorite movies, and if I keep watching, it might push itself up to that number 2 or 1 spot. It's so good. So the plot of Noroi opens up, and they tell you right away that it's a longer film, that this documentary filmmaker is dead, or he's missing. His wife died in a fire, and he is missing completely. And we have a timeline of the events when this happens. And then we kind of flash forward. We go back a couple years, and we see all these kind of paranormal activities happening around this area that seem unrelated at times. And he's documenting a lot of them. Some are pulled from news source footage. Some are pulled from television shows. All these kind of things like that. And we're like, what's this all tie in together? So before long, we are introduced to these characters. One person who's considered kind of probably a schizophrenic in a certain way. He has a tinfoil hat, literally, and he says he sees spirits and things like this. We have a young girl who's put on this TV show to see if she has any psychic abilities, and she ends up passing, and Flying Color is the only one. And then we have a young actress who witnesses some sort of psychic phenomenon when she's out in the woods near this kind of haunted place. And there's a beautiful creep moment in there where we see the footage a couple times, but we witness something in the background, which is horrifying. So this guy is 100% intrigued in all this stuff, and as he digs deeper, he starts to get pulled into this whole ancient ritual that happened in this small town that was flooded but was completely flooded, and they put it as a dam, and all the people that lived there, the villagers, moved to a local town. So he starts to focus on this local town, and he's getting hints constantly by these psychics and things like that, and things get more and more complicated when a couple of the same people he keeps running into in different locations, and all these horrible things happen. Mass suicides, fires, and it just gets more and more like dangerous. And it's just following you down a spiral, like completely into like this horrible act that's going to happen. And we see everything set up. We have these little bits of darkness added in the story where there's a character that's introduced that you learn that she used to perform abortions, probably past like the legal time you could do that. So that is another element in there. Which is really creepy and scary. When it comes to fruition at the end, the idea that the villagers have all these dogs, and just a lot of setup, a lot of foreshadowing, a lot of stuff that is set up, built in, and it all pays off in glorious, terrifying detail. It is one of these weird movies where you are so intrigued in the story. It's pretty straightforward from A-B. Nothing really happens that completely out there, but you do have to pay attention. It is a long film. But I just cannot. I'm so impressed with how well put together the story is, how well put together the medium is, of how he uses, the film, and how he does the mockumentary kind of style and the footage and how it's edited, and how we go back and watch old footage and say, well, this character was there and this person has to be related, and this, look at this, we did not see this. He does that in stuff like, I think it's Cult, or is it a Cult? I mixed the two names up. But there's one where you see, like, see right here, we didn't notice this thing in the sky. Well, we know that it's everywhere now, and that's a problem. Like, and just stuff like that where it's just absolutely horrifying. Love the lead in here. Although he is basically going forth and pushing forward, he's getting tons of people killed, which you're like, it's kind of fucked up, really, because you should just, like, do you just stop at a certain point and just, like, write it off, like, and not continue this? But Noroi is one of the best of its subgenre of the J-horror. 2005 is a little late, honestly, so it didn't really get the recognition it deserved. There's a lot of features that mention that, but it's a fantastic movie. I know it got put on Shudder, but with this said, I really wish people would watch this. It's incredibly dark, incredibly scary. Just one of the best Japanese horror films I've ever seen, if not one of the best horror films from the early 2000s I've seen. Well, mid 2000s I've ever seen. I love this movie. I think it's a fantastic film. As far as the special features, 5.1 mix, brand new audio commentary by film critic Julian Singleton, director's POV, a brand new video interview with Noroi the Cursed, director Koji Shirayashi, The Man in the Shadows, a brand new interview with Noroi Cursed producer Takashin Inshins, I can't say that, Inchais, Changing Perspective, a brand new video essay on the film by Japanese horror specialist Lindsay Nelson, Ectoplasmic Worms, a brand new video essay on Noroi the Cursed and Japanese cosmic horror by Japanese cinema expert Amber T. There's a lot of mention of Lovecraft as well as the commentary and everything like that. And I do think there's Lovecraft in here, of course, but I think there's a lot of like classic Asian folklore and stuff in there, and rituals and things that are in a lot of other films before this, way before this. And then How to Protect Yourself Against Curses, Urgent Report Pursuing the Truth About Katawadaba, a TV special, which in over a half an hour of deleted scenes, trailers, that kind of stuff. So Katawadaba is the demon there is a big exposition dump of kind of a historian on the folklore in the film that basically says what the character is. And he says, well, in layman's terms, it's a demon, because people do not understand it, but it is far more than that. And it's actually really horrifying the way they describe that. Something that's unknown to the human psyche. It's always a really scary aspect for me in horror films, and Noroi is one of the best at it. Great creepy mask. Just love this movie. Great characters too. Check it out for sure. Alright, next up we have one from Film Masters, who always do a fantastic job. It's a double here. Night of the Blood Beast and Attack of the Giant Leeches. And the director is Saint Bernard, I can't think, Kowalski. And so the first one, we'll hop into that. Night of the Blood Beast from 1958. Now this is your standard kind of cheapy Corman produced late 50s, low budget sci-fi movie that lives freely from several, other materials, including The Thing from Another World, The Quatermass Experiment, The Day the Earth Stood Still, kind of all stuff like that. I love that kind of deal, and the thing about these movies is they're like 62 minutes, so they don't really wear out their welcome. What we have is an astronaut who is going to have to crash land to Earth, and of course there's a bunch of his fellow friends and waiting for him down there, including his wife. I don't know what group of ragtag scientist or whatever this whole thing is. Well, he crashes and he dies, unfortunately, but there's something attached to the ship that is very bizarre. They take him into the office, they're trying to see what happened, and he comes back to life. And they're like, "What? You should be dead." And he's not really. They say you're technically dead. We don't understand why you're still moving. And he seems semi-fine. We'll come to find out he's been impregnated by this weird kind of alien that's come from a different planet or something, and his life is like in danger because his planet blew themselves up. Think the Earth stood still, right? And he tries to convince them not to kill him, and he has absorbed one of them. Think kind of like The Thing, right? Or anything where the monsters will suck up the brains. It's later used in Starship Troopers, and now he has the intelligence of one of their doctors. So he's trying to convince them. And at times it comes across very Invasion of the Body Snatchers idea, right? It's like, well, if we're all the same and we all have the same thoughts, and we won't, but then you lose your humanity, you lose your identity, all that kind of stuff like that, done on a really cheap scale. It is actually really funny because the monster looks like a mole covered in mud or dirt, and he's like talking like a doctor. He's like, "Wait, I don't want to hurt you." And you're just like, it's the kind of movie that you would watch at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning and find great joy from. I'm sure it's been on Mystery Science Theater at one point. Yeah, definitely was. And Mystery Science Theater is not really my jam, to be honest, because I'm the moron that actually likes these movies. So when I see, and I'm sure the people behind Mystery Science Theater, they do like them as well, but they have a weird sense of it. And the people that watch it kind of just always, they just assume all the movies on there are actually pieces of shit when they don't make movies themselves. It's just weird to me. Nothing against anybody that likes it. It just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know how to say it. So, never been a huge fan of Mystery Science Theater. This movie overall, I did enjoy it. It's a quick, easy watch. The acting's not phenomenal. The special effects aren't phenomenal. It's cheap. It's fast paced. And at one point, I was like siding with the alien. And then at the very end, somebody comes to their senses, and he's like, "No, screw that. You screwed up your planet." He's like, "No." It's really fun. It's just a cheesy B movie produced by Corman. And are they both produced by Gene Corman? But I think they are. Roger Corman's brother, who is his younger brother, but got into movies before him. Now I have to say this here. So we have the TV format of Night of the Blood Beast, 8mm silent digest version of Night of the Blood Beast, and we have a feature-length commentary by Tom Weaver for both films. Now, Tom Weaver has a magnificent voice, but he knows tons of stuff about these movies. He knows the history of these movies. He knows the players, from the producers, the directors, the writers, the actors, the people who did the fucking soundtrack. So, the way he does these commentaries is he makes you laugh. He gives you a bunch of information. He has clips of the people actually recorded talking. It's kind of the all-around, like, kind of the best what you could have, to be honest. He mentions, Meet It Corman, all sorts of great stuff. I might as well talk about the Attack of the Giant Leeches commentary as well here. But he mentions great stories about Corman, and Corman has since passed since he's done this, and, he just talks about how nice he was to him and dedicates the Attack of the Giant Leeches commentary to him. But I think he's just a great mixture of knowledge and the great mentality to have. He's not going to sugarcoat anything, but he's also not going to sit there and just badmouth the movie in its entirety. He's a very honest guy. He knows a lot about the movies, and he knows a lot about the people who were in the movies. So, and that's kind of like such a rare kind of thing nowadays, because you have people like me that just talk about the movies and just whatnot. Not a historian, just a fan. But when you're looking at people like these historians that actually know the people that were involved with the movies and have footage and actually firsthand knowledge of it, it's just because a lot of these people have since passed years and years ago. So this is like our next direct kind of line into this information. And not people aren't going to be around forever, so it's really nice to hear these commentaries and pull from them. And hopefully people still give a shit in 100 years about Night of the Blood Beast and Attack of the Giant Leeches. But Night of the Blood Beast, solid B movie. It came from outer space. Now it's on Earth, kind of assimilating, absorbing, trying to warn us all at the same time. Space movie. And there is some other things on here as well, like full booklet, comparisons between the remastered footage and everything like that. But a fun movie.
When I hit the lotto and become a billionaire, one of my purchases will be a fish tank full of seahorses with artwork of ribs on the back wall of the tank as a tribute to Blood Beast. We're told that these creatures were the critters in his bloodstream, growing fast. You'd think that those things busting out of John's blood vessels would have caused him some discomfort. A lot of Monster Kid writers call Corcoran a pregnant man, and even the Blood Beast trailer narrator calls the Blood Beast, quote, the first satellite creature to impregnate man with its chromosomes, unquote. The Variety reviewer wrote, it's finally happened. Someone wrote a story about a pregnant man.
If you destroy them, you destroy me.
Okay, now we're going to talk about Attack of the Giant Leeches by Bernard Kowalski, 1959. There we go. And this one, I think, is, you get two different kind of sci-fi 50s B movies. You got It Came from Outer Space, which is actually a movie itself, but, the little something. And then you have goddamn radiation, right? You have them and Godzilla and all that kind of stuff like that. Those are the A pictures, and then you have a bunch of B pictures that came afterwards, like the giant Gila monster and this one, Attack of the Giant Leeches. So what we have here is we have a backwoods, which I love. I love exploitation, kind of backwoods exploitation shit. It's just like I don't know if anybody knows this, but big part of my family. I was born in Toledo, but a big chunk of my family was originally from the South. So, like, I think that like it's just naturally in my blood to love this kind of exploitation crap when I watch it. I just like it. I don't know. Maybe it's politically incorrect to enjoy the shit, but I don't like. It's just trashy fun, and everybody's like, "What you in there for?" and all that kind of shit. Like just over the top exaggeration. This one takes place in Florida though, so it's not exactly in that what you would call, but it definitely has that feel for 100% swamp kind of people in this movie. So in the very beginning, you have a group of 5 or 6 characters just sitting around, and we have this kind of big, heavy guy named Dave, and he's got this really gorgeous wife, and it's always that thing like, why is she with him? All that kind of shit that would kind of be spewed about it. So, a guy in the beginning says he saw a giant leech. And nobody believes him. Of course, he's telling the story. Reminds me of what was that one that came out, the Bigfoot movie, that Creature from Black Lake. It's all the kind of same old shit. Nobody's gonna believe you saw the monster. So what happens is he gets attacked eventually and killed. And the environmental cop and the sheriff are button heads. The sheriff is an absolute piece of garbage. In fact, the movie Alien Dead, which came out in 1980 by Fred Olen Ray, reminds me of exactly the sheriff in that movie. Was such a dickhead, and I feel like he's just doing this movie again. Like Alien Dead is a lot like Attack of the Giant Leeches with more gore. So essentially, the giant leeches are picking people off here and there. One of the big scenes is Cal is sleeping with Dave's wife, and Dave catches him and chases him in the swamp, and he makes him get in the water, and then the giant leeches come out. The giant leeches aren't very great, Are they better than something like William Griffey's Man o' War, the killer jellyfish movie? I'm going with the giant leeches being a little bit better, But yeah. So what happens is the giant leeches start eating people, eating the town. They have them in like an underground, like an underwater like cave, and they're sucking their blood. That's a pretty graphic scene too for 1959, where they come suck all their blood. So all these like swamp people are getting fed on by the leeches, and it's up to a couple scientists and this cop, this environmental cop, environmental protection agent, to take them out. So yeah, that's pretty much the plot. There's an end scuba diving scene that's just probably very poorly reminiscent of Creature from the Black Lagoon from 5 years previous is 54. So, overall, Attack of the Giant Leeches is fun. Like, I watch these movies, like Beast from the Haunted Cave, all these movies they're put out, and I'm like, they're fun, they're entertaining, they're not like, they're B pictures, they're not A-list movies, but they're so well remastered, the supplemental features are so fantastic. I'm just like, man, they did such a great job on this, and I enjoy watching these. I don't know, they're very comfort food for me. Like, they're easy watches, shut your brain off, and they're just fun. And he gets into details about Yvette Vickers, and tells about her whole life on the commentary. Tom Weaver does, and that's really sad. But also, he can find humor in it and everything, talking about with the neighbor. But just a great release from Film Masters. And oh yes, they are on separate discs, so you don't have to worry about being on the same disc. You don't want them all crudded up. But yeah, nice little booklet in here too. So just a great release and everything like that. I would highly recommend picking these up if you are a fan of B pictures, sci-fi movies. And this guy knows his stuff on here. Tom Weaver, great stuff. Alright, we got to get into some 2024 movies, and I'm already getting winded. So this one here is from Dread Central Epic Pictures, and this is Beazle. Now, I've not heard too much about this one, but it's pretty solid overall. It kind of jumps, start in the 60s, and then goes in the 80s, and then goes in the early 2000s, and then kind of goes like 2010. So we have like 4 time periods here, which is kind of cool. It's kind of bizarre because at times you'll have like the old cameras, different cameras, and then shot on video cameras, and you're like, and then we'll cut to like actual like real movie, and you're like, it's weird that we start with this framing device of all these different cameras, but then eventually we're just filming it like a regular movie. Like, they wanted to commit to it, but they didn't want to commit to it, and I understand completely why. It's a cool aesthetic to show the different time frames by jumping into the different cameras and stuff like that and technology. So I won't hold that against them. I think it's cool. But yeah, so we start in the 60s, and we have, like, of course, this family, and there's something in the, like, crawl space, and, like, the kids are attacked, and the father's still alive. We fast forward to the 80s, and he's trying to clear his name, hires a documentary filmmaker, and he says, listen, I want to clear my name. I didn't kill my wife and kid. I want people to know that I didn't do it. And as it progresses, we learn what the hell is in the cellar. We bring in related family members, and it gets creepier and weirder, and every time it changes time frames, we learn a little bit more about it. overall it's decent, it's solid. The last act, I think the last act is probably the longest in here. Overall, I think it's a good movie. I don't have that much to say about it. I think it's well shot, well acted, well directed, made on a budget, one location, it's shot in his old childhood home, so that's a nice touch to it. Yeah, the special effects are good. There's a couple like kind of creepy moments. This Beazle character is kind of like a weird demonic entity or witch or something along the lines that has possessive powers. Some sex scenes, some weird camera tricks within the weird technology that we're using. Overall, Beazle is a nice little creepy low budget horror film. Not do it yourself low budget, but professionally made no low budget horror film. We have the making of Beazle on here, short film Dr. Death, short film The Sleepwatcher, exclusive Dread trailers. From my understanding, the director says this is originally going to be an anthology. And then one of the stories on the shorts was just so good that he decided to make a feature-length version of it. But yeah, it's just a pretty good horror film, creepy, worth watching for sure, and that monster is in the movie, Beazle. Okay, next up is Eight Eyes. Now, this is a Vinegar Syndrome, what is this, Productions. This is one they actually produced themselves. Newer film, I think it was released 2023, but wide release 2024, so it's going to count for that. This one was actually made by a guy, Austin Jennings, who's behind like producing or directing the Joe Bob Briggs drive-in show. Great show, love that. And it was made in Serbia, so that's really cool as well. A lot of horror films are actually made in Serbia. I think Joe Lynch shoots some of his there, of course. But yeah, Eight Eyes. So low budget, shot on 16mm and 8mm film because Vinegar Syndrome will not really deal with anything that's not done on film. So, it's got a fantastic look about it, and the movie's decent. It's solid. I like it. But, not gonna lie, when something's shot on film, it just adds a layer to it, and it's really cool to see different parts of Serbia filmed on film in this area and this kind of location, because a lot of the movie is a travel log. We visit 3 or 4 different kind of cities, including New York, at the end of the movie. Yeah. So, I like this. This basically follows a vacationing married couple. They first are at a wedding, and we kind of witness some of the culture and everything like that. And as they're going up early in the morning and looking at different locations, the boyfriend's more of a film nerd. He has like old cameras and films a lot of stuff, and he seems to want to document a lot of the thing. And the wife seems a little bit more free-spirited, I guess. Maybe a little off, and I don't necessarily know when she starts to get these weird kind of trippy sensory things in there, but it does happen. They meet this guy that goes by St. Peter. He is half blind. He says he was at the wedding, but I don't remember seeing him. Maybe he's in the background. But yeah, so you think, well, they start to hang out and he's going to show them the real Serbia, right? And you think, oh, this is going to turn into a Hostel kind of style movie, right, where they get kidnapped, or maybe even something darker like the I Spit on Your Grave 2 movie, which is the sequel to the remake, and which is really nasty. So you're thinking, is it going to go in this direction? But so they start to get deeper and everything, and they get separated. And there's a really great moment, a really great reveal when we think that something has happened to one of them. And I don't want to spoil everything in this movie, so I'm not going to get in super depth here yet. And somebody's looking through their camera footage, like the 8mm film, and winding it and seeing everything, and the viewfinder and the whatever where they're cutting it, and we see what happened. And that's just a good reveal. There's parts where are really scary, when it's got that kind of xenophobic thing, right? When you're in the middle of somewhere else, and I wouldn't even call it that because it's just like you're uncertain, you're not familiar with the land, so it's going to be scarier to you, right? And just in that aspect, and it works really well in there too. But the end of the movie, the last act, definitely turned into Serbian Chainsaw Massacre. Not that there's anything wrong with that. We are introduced to kind of a weird variety of kind of family members, and it turns into some gore fest. Not super gory, but it has its moments. It's bloody, it's weird, it gets psychedelic and nonsensically crazy, and we have beautiful imagery and stuff all shot on film, like I said. But yeah, so overall, Eight Eyes is good. It's solid. It's nice. It's shot beautifully. But the highlight of the movie is the score, and it's by a band called like Ennio something, obviously, or is it Morricone's or something like that. They're obviously inspired by Ennio Morricone, which is one of the best of all time, if not the best of all time. So the score is fantastic visually, and the audio is fantastic, the music's fantastic. So it's like that pretty much makes up a lot on the film. The story's decent too. Overall, Eight Eyes is pretty good. I enjoyed the acting. It's not the best acting ever, but it's pretty solid. As far as the special features are concerned, after I get through the 2 slip covers here, we have shot entirely on motion picture film and finished in 4K. And then we have commentary track with co-writer, director, editor Austin Jennings, producer Justin Martell, and co-writer, animator, sound recordist Matt Frink. So Much to Love, an interview with actress Emily Sweet. This experience, an interview with actor Bradford Thomas. Answering Honestly, an interview with actor Bruno Janowski. A Piece of History, an interview with co-producer Seeger Dixon. Doing Cowboy Shit, an interview with cinematographer Sean Delberg. Idea Man, an interview with co-writer, animator, sound recordist Mark Frink. A group discussion with co-writer, director, editor Austin Jennings, cinematographer Sean Delberg, and co-producer Seeger Dixon. Production diary, a collection behind-the-scenes footage, reversible sleeve artwork, and English subtitles. So pretty solid movie. I enjoyed it. Look forward to what else Vinegar Syndrome Productions puts out. This is their 7th release, and I know that Black Eyed Susan's coming out by Scooter McRae from next time, so I'm really happy to check that one out. Awesome stuff. All right, next up is Heretic, and this is by the people that directed Haunt that came out a few years ago. I really like Haunt. I think it was a great horror movie. You know, terrifying group of people that get stuck in a real haunt, or like a haunt where a bunch of killers are in there. Good stuff. So Heretic. Now this stars Hugh Grant, a big name there, and basically it's pretty much a three-hander. You got 3 actors in here. You got these 2 girls. I can't think of their names. Both fantastic performances. Hugh Grant, I love, but I'm not like the fan of his like romantic comedy stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I just really watch it. I liked him in Extreme Prejudice. Liked him in Lair of the White Worm. And this one, he is fucking amazing. He's playing against type, right? He's kind of a creep in it. So, or at the very least, they make you think he's a creep, but I don't want to spoil it yet. So we have 2, Mormons. Yeah, Mormons. That end up, they're kind of visiting door to door, like trying to meet people and everything, and they have like a list of people that has showed interest in going and joining the Mormon church. They're young. They're probably in their early 20s, I'd say. So they show up to this house, and it's Hugh Grant. They're not allowed in at first unless there's a woman present, and they go in, and there's kind of been some lies and stuff, and he's like, oh, there's pie. I'm making pie. My wife's in the other room making it. And they're like, okay. And then we realize there's a blueberry candle lit, blueberry pie candle lit, and that all kind of stuff. But the real driving force of this movie, and this is going to turn a lot of people off. This isn't your typical, it is religious horror, but it's not your typical possession film. It's not your typical demon film. It's nothing in that aspect. So a big chunk of the movie is just talking philosophically and ideology and stuff like that about religion. And it's the best parts of the movie. This is a longer film, probably like 110 minutes or something like that, 5 minutes or something. And the big chunk of the movie is this back and forth talking between these people and just watching some of these girls get horrified. It's darkly comedic in times because Hugh Grant is just chewing the scenery. He's fucking hilarious in it. And I don't want to spoil anything, but he's comparing these different things. He's comparing religion to Monopoly board games and shit like that. And it's just really funny to me because it's so dark and weird and twisted, and somebody approaching it at like a super high intelligence, but it gets darker than that. I love the responses here, and one thing I really liked about the movie is, now we're gonna get into some spoiler territory here a little bit, so slight spoilers I'll say, is they could have so easily just made, the girls ditch their religion and have no fate, right? Bullshit, no fate. But, they start arguing back at points. And at the very end of the movie, overall, the movie could have been so... It does end, I'd say, the slight last thing is kind of dark, kind of twisted, where it's like, oh, fuck, maybe there is no hope. But I think the final message, kind of in a way, at least with these girls' takeaway, is that sometimes having faith, or, isn't necessarily the wrong way to go about it, or something like that, It's just, overall, I just like the movie. It didn't come across as completely one-noted, if that makes any sense. Now, the second half, it has a big reveal, and it's gross, and it's weird, and it's creepy, and kind of half expected at that point where they have to go somewhere. But I really like this movie, and it's really a performance film. It's really just weird and bizarre. First act's a 5-star movie for me. Second act is still good. I like it. I don't love it. But overall, the movie's pretty great. I love the performances. The awkwardness that these 2 girls have, especially the one who's more like meek, is just fantastic. Her responses are like just complete nervousness is lovely. And there's just some great dialogue. I think the dialogue between them is good too, and the dialogue between Hugh Grant is great. Overall, I'd really recommend Heretic. I saw it in theaters and I loved it. So great stuff. Okay, next up is The Watchers 2024, directed by M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. Not the same one that is in his movie, what is it, Trap, but this is a different one. So both his daughters being in films really cool this year. This is The Watchers. Now, I heard really bad things about this movie, so I was like, my hopes were not very high. When it started off, I was like, the sound design's fucking fantastic. Amazing sound design. It took place in Ireland, and I was just like, so... And spoilers here, but every fucking horror movie that takes place in Ireland has got to have fairies or changelings. And I think they're the same. I call them changelings. But every movie, every horror movie, and I'm sorry I'm spoiling this a little right off the bat. So I guess this review's useless for people that still want to watch it. So this one's going to be spoiler filled. Can we get away from the fucking changelings? Every horror movie, a boy in his hole. A boy in his hole. Or is it a hole in the ground? Or something like that. I can't remember the name, but it has like a kid on the front. I'm mixing up two movies. But a hole in the ground. It's just, it was so obvious. And when you do this, it's obvious. It's so obvious right off the cuff. It's just like you ruin your movie. It's so obvious. So essentially we have Dakota Fanning driving through the countryside, and her car gets out of gas. She crashes. In the beginning we realize there's something in the surrounding woods that she cannot get out of here because somebody was attacked when they tried to escape and everything like that. So basically they come out at night, apparently, these things. And so she gets took to this weird place by these people. The lady from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, newest Texas Chainsaw Massacre is in there, and Mandy, she's also in that. It's one of the cult people, I believe. And they basically run down and say, listen, we're trapped in this place. These are watchers. They're watching us. They just want to see how normal humans act. And you think they're changelings, so the whole plot is that these watchers want to watch them so they can learn how to basically emulate human behavior and move into the real world. Because a changeling is someone that kidnaps a child and it takes over its body, right? You know, it takes its spot. Kind of like a pod person kind of mythology, right? Old folk kind of tale thing. So that's essentially the plot here. So a lot of this movie is characters in a room in the middle of the woods with things watching them want to try to act normal. So there's a lot of us watching that. Like, okay, we're watching someone watch people try to act normal. Cool. There's a couple plot twists, and each time there is a twist, it's probably a worse movie for it. I mean, like, there's one point where, you know, it's like, well, one of them is going to be a changeling. Automatically off the bat, right? And we have that kind of twist. Overall, this is bad. This isn't good. I don't think the acting's horrible. I don't think the sound design was great. The special effects on the changelings, kind of crappy. Not very great. But then, like I said, guys, before, if you're really invested in the movie and it's got poor CGI, you'll probably let it slide, unless it's really bad. But when you're not invested, that's just going to make it stick out like a sore thumb, and that's what happens with The Watchers. Not a fan of this. This is pretty crummy. It's one of my least favorite movies of the year, so I wouldn't recommend. Okay, next up is Speak No Evil. Of course, it is a remake of Danish or Swedish film? I can't think. Scandinavian film or something like that. Dutch film made a couple years back. Why remake it? Who cares? Who knows why they think this way? Probably because it's a good story that they wanted American actors in. Now, the big actor in here is James McAvoy. And also, the person who plays his wife is the woman who is in Stop Motion and Nightingale. So, fantastic actress, fantastic actor as kind of the baddie couple, if you guys know the movie. And the plot, the trailer spoils everything, so I don't even know I'm worried about spoilers here, but I've already seen the original, so boom. Now, the original kind of placates on people being polite and is being their downfall, when to not say no, right? So Speak No Evil follows, I think that James McAvoy and his wife, I can't think of the actress's name, are a British couple. We have an American couple. They're kind of down on their luck living in Britain, and they're vacationing, and they run into this couple, and they start a fast friendship, and they say, hey, why don't you guys come visit us on our farm and hang out? James McAvoy and his wife are a little bit more, crazy, and a little bit more, just free-spirited, I guess, so they seem, and they're kind of in a more uptight couple. They have some romantic problems. They also have some financial problems at the point, some work-related issues. They have a daughter, and McAvoy and his wife have a son who doesn't seem to speak well, but the trailer will tell you why not, right? Because he got his tongue chopped off, because they spoil every fucking thing in the trailer. So, I don't hate this movie. I'm sorry if I'm coming across like a jackass and really angry about it. It's just a complete... The trailer's trash bags. Spoils everything. McAvoy's fantastic in it. He's doing his best Conor McGregor impression, which I don't mean that as an insult to his acting, because I think Conor McGregor is insane. at this point, and he's just very aggressive, and he's just kind of like a very full of charisma kind of guy, but just dangerous at the same time, and that's what James McAvoy is doing. The reveal here is I like I said, it's so hard to approach this movie because I'd seen the original. It's not a horrible film. It's well acted. It's well shot. The suspense is good. Don't care much for the American couple. Kind of bland. Kind of boring. Maybe that's the point. I like the villains. They're entertaining, but I think they do actually do a better job than the original. But then again, I think the original is a better movie because it's more subtle. It's more nuanced. It's more cultural to the point where I think by it happening. I do have a hard time believing that this couple was here. And also the daughter is just terrible. She's so... The stuffed animal thing is just hoppy. Fuck your rabbit. We're gone. We're leaving. But the twist, of course, it's not really a twist. What they're trying to do as they're trying to kill them and take their daughter and move forth and steal all their money and things like that. In the original, it's so much of a darker ending, right? In the American ending, they kind of wussed out. But they still try to create something really nasty at the end. So it's like, hey, it's still dark, right? It's like, not really. Not dark enough compared to the original. Because the original, the whole point of it is that it ends on that note and you're just like, oh, shit. This one doesn't have the oh, shit. So it's just like, solid, good, horror thriller. Not fantastic, well acted. So it's all right. Speak no evil. Boy, I'm getting winded. Next up is Never Let Go by Alexander Aja, who directed High Tension, the Piranha remake, Mirrors, Hills Have Eyes remake. I'm sure he has a couple other ones under his belt. Crawl. So he's a good, solid director for the most part. Most of the movies I've seen by him, I've enjoyed. Never Let Go is one I also enjoyed. So, talk about woods, right? We're just talking about the Watchers and stuff, and Speak No Evil, isolated locations, but Watchers and this have a lot of similarities. This is just a better film. So, at the very beginning, we have, Halle Berry, and she has 2 young kids, not that young, 10, maybe 12, something along that age, and we are explained that they are isolated on these woods, and they have to tie a rope to the house, and this outstretched rope, they can never leave it. They cannot be cut the rope. They cannot get out of the house without the rope, or there'll be some sort of evil after them, an ancient evil, kind of like when evil lurks, right? But only Halle Berry can see this evil. It usually takes the form of her parents or her husband or someone along those lines. They also have a dog named Coda. So right away, you're like, are we going to have like a frailty kind of storyline here? What's real? What's fake? It's one of the twins. That's kind of where you're getting at, right? And as it progresses, there's obviously some weird animosity towards the twin brothers, where one is a more firm believer. And they makes them constantly pray and touch the wood. It does give it a great old-timey kind of folklorish humor. Not humor, like horror kind of element to it, which I like. Halle Berry's good in it. The acting's pretty solid in the movie overall. The locations are cool. The cinematography's solid. Overall, it's a well-made movie. And it does play with the points where you're like, what is it kind of be? And it doesn't ever come across like shitty or annoying, and I think that it handles where it goes and how it does it well. There's a couple moments that are actually creepy, surprising or not, where like there's a thing in the well, and that thing looks horrifying, and you only get a glimpse of it, which I thought was really nice. But overall, I think Never Let Go is a good kind of horror film, demonic kind of style thing, where evil kind of possibly follows you. It's in you. And you're, kind of that evil kind of like thing that like is the vessel for it, or it's in you or whatnot. And I like that aspect. And maybe it's hereditary, maybe it's passed on, all this kind of shit like that. But Never Let Go is a good movie. I would recommend it. Solid horror film. All right, next up is You'll Never Find Me, release in 2023, wide release 2024. Australian horror film here, yeah. So this is just basically a two-hander movie, 2 people in one location. And when you do that, you really have to have great acting, great sound design, great cinematography, and great dialogue. And this one has most of that, but it definitely has great dialogue. So we have this lonely Australian man sitting in his trailer at 2 o'clock in the morning. He gets a hard knock on his door. He answers violently upset. What the fuck do you want? Who is this? When he answers, it's a woman completely soaking wet in cold weather. It seems to be winter months for them. And he's like, where were you? Why are you out here? She says, I was on the beach. Her feet are cold. He's like, why are you swimming at the beach? And within like 10 minutes, I was like, well, this has got to be this. And I ended up being right. So I won't spoil that. But the way they get there, it's one of these movies where you guess, well, that's what's happening. But then they're like, is it? Boom, 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 like all the way to get to the end, and then it is what's happening. And it's not like those ideas where they cheat or anything like that, right? Or like High Tension, great movie, but High Tension kind of cheats, where it's like, oh, it's that, right? And then it's like, oh, then they do a bunch of shit to make it not that, where it's impossible to be that, and then they're like, guess what? It's still that. You're like, that doesn't make any sense anymore. I knew it was that, but then you told me it wasn't because you had lied. You fucking made nonsense for 2 hours, and then it's that. But then people are like, unreliable narrator. No, I don't care. Sometimes it's a cheat, and that was a fucking cheat. But so here's what we have here. All right. So they start to like interact, and I can't believe this movie's like an hour. It's like 100 minutes, and it still keeps your attention. The dialogue they say about being lonely, about making mistakes, about nightmares, about staying awake, and you're like, this is really intriguing, haunting stuff. And the way he's coming across saying this stuff, it makes sense at the reveal who he's talking to. Like I said, the great performance by the main guy, and I think a good performance by the lead lady as well. But she starts to feel in danger within, like, and sometimes she starts to relieve herself and all these kind of things like that. It's just a nice little kind of thriller, like kind of ghost story, if you will, and haunting kind of story. Overall, you know, I think that You'll Never Find Me is a good movie. It's a solid film. Like, the more I say, the more I'll spoil. There's great sound design in terms of the storm and the rain, and yeah, it's just a good horror thriller. Not that much to be said about it unless you're going to dive into spoilers and start dissecting what is happening. Some haunting imagery towards the end of the movie, but recommended. It shows that you really don't need $1 billion to make a good, satisfying horror film or well-acted film either. All right, let's get into those 1982 movies.
I know I'm human. If you were all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to. But it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstones! You only moved the headstones! Why?
For a girl like you to come into my life, I've been waiting for a girl like you, who love and will survive. I've been waiting for someone new to make me feel alive. Yeah, waiting for a girl like you to come into my life.
You bitch! You called me a bitch!
What's in the basket?
stop it. There's no more time. You've got to... Please, stop it. Stop it now. Turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it!
Okay, first up is Caligula, the Untold Story, directed by Joe D'Amato, who had a busy 1980s so far. In 1980, did Anthropophagus, and he went on to do like Porno Holocaust, Erotic Nights of the Living Dead, Black Sex and Black Magic, Absurd, and then of course Caligula, the Untold Story. So we got a bunch of Joe D'Amato from 80 to 82 already. Love Joe D'Amato. So this one, I like the original 79 Caligula, although it's been a long time. The year previous we had Caligula and Messalina from 1981. So Caligula is on the human being's mind to make movies about for some odd reason. Probably obviously because 1979 Tinto Brass movie Caligula. So this is what, the third, fourth Caligula movie, probably the fucking 100th by this time. It stars David Brandon. David Brandon, people will know from Stage Fright and Beyond Darkness. He was kind of a regular in some Italian horror films, although he's not Italian. I think he's British. He makes a good Caligula because, Caligula's got to have this weird, like, flamboyance about him, like this theatrics, and he does. He's kind of, like, flamboyant like this, but when you see the guy talk and everything life, he doesn't really feel like that. I think he was, like, a theater actor at times, but he's very theatrical and, like feminine acting, and I think it's a good Caligula, to be honest. But the story of Caligula, what was his actual name? They just called him Caligula because the little shoes he wore, according to this movie. Don't know all that much about Caligula except the fucking movies because I'm a heathen. I'm a monster, okay? I'm an uncultured swine. But, he's just, it's your typical Caligula story, right? He's a monster who gets into power and he starts to rape and carry on whatever he wants. He has orgies. He has, of course, there's a group that's obviously trying to overthrow him, including Michele Soave, who is Joe D'Amato's assistant at the time and go on to direct some movies himself. And Mark Shannon's in there, of course, from Porno Holocaust, everyone's favorite film. So it's got all these kind of people in there that you recognize, that you know in these movies. It's violent. Gabrielle Tinti's in it. The main love interest for dear old Caligula is Laura Gemscher because it's Joe D'Amato. Of course, why wouldn't it not be Black Emanuelle herself? So yeah, if you're looking for a slew of a bunch of classic kind of actors that are in Joe D'Amato's group, you know them. George Eastman wrote the screenplay. I think that David Brandon's a good Caligula. I think Laura Gemscher is pretty solid in her role, and it's basically just a group trying to overthrow him, and then we have kind of an ending of craziness. There's two versions of the movie. There's a 95-minute English version, and then there's like a 2-hour and 1-minute version, which all that stuff that's basically in here is essentially just like porno, hardcore porno inserts, and they don't feel like inserts. They feel like they belong in the movie. So we'll see some like oral sex, we'll see some full penetration shots, interracial sex, all sorts of things that were probably considered really crazy at 1982, and now they're just like, yeah, who gives a shit? It's great. But, there's that in there. Gabrielle Tinti is sodomized by what I think is a sword that pops out of his chest. Actually married to Laura Gemscher. So there's some nasty bits in here, of course. I don't think it ever meets kind of the mean-spiritedness of the original 1979 Caligula. It never meets the grandeur of the original 1979 Caligula. From memory, I would put this above Caligula and Messalina by Bruno Mattei, but it doesn't have that great line, I promote you to Secretary of Sex, like Caligula and Messalina. Overall, this is not a bad Caligula movie, but how good can you get if you're not actually doing the real thing? But we have the Orgy of Power interview with David Brandon, a false true story interview with screenwriter Luigi Montefiore, who is George Eastman, a good old-fashioned Loverboy interview with actor Mark Shannon, who's since passed away, IRP, deleted scenes, UK video trailer, and we have the soundtrack. Oh, they actually have a little still there of poor old Gabrielle Tinti getting sodomized by something. There is a little bit of homosexuality in here, good old Caligula makes out with his best bud, but would you have it any other way in a Caligula movie? I certainly wouldn't. But yeah, that's Caligula, the Untold Story. Alright guys, now we're going to go into another 1982 movie, and this is Victims. Not to be confused with Victims from 1982. We're going to do The First Victims by Paul Vorno. And this one is a real wild movie. I can't believe I hadn't seen it or really heard much about it. So, in that long line of kind of sleazy, gross LA movies, which I just watched one, and I don't mean it as an insult, I mean it as a compliment, that 902128 Hollywood or something like that, where we just got this character from Grindhouse that had these mommy issues. This is kind of in that vein, right? So we have this guy who's, I think, wrongfully released, and he's going through psychiatry and everything like that, and he's a middle-aged guy, you know. He's all fucked up bad already, though, and he's like, says he's a traveling door salesman, and every woman he encounters, he basically just rapes or beats or does something awful. So we're constantly jumping back into flashbacks of what happened to him with his mom, who's a prostitute, and her her pimp, and her violent end eventually is in the reveal with his violent end. So we're kind of doing that story, right? We have his old backstory, his history, constantly reminded of what's happening to him in the modern day and why he's so fucked up. Usually these movies would garner sympathy, like Maniac might, or Nightmare on a Damaged Brain might, where you like feel bad for George Tatum or you feel bad for Frank Zito. This time I'm watching it and I'm like, I do not feel a fucking ounce of sympathy for this fucking guy. And it's probably just his demeanor. At one point he goes to like rent this room for rent, and he's like, hey man, sir, he's doing like a Shakespeare because he saw like a Shakespeare flyer, and he's like, can I rent a room? I'm not doing what he did, but I don't know what the fuck. He's just saying really odd shit. And she's like, I don't know, my husband's not here. Lets him in. And of course, right, he has a violent encounter with her. He does rape a couple people, which is rather unpleasant. In fact, even murder someone, which this whole movie is leading to that moment because that's what happened to his dear old mom. This movie is dark. It is nasty. It is mean-spirited. It is gritty. It's unpleasant. It's good for what it is, and I like this kind of thing, to be honest, when I'm talking about my sleaziness and serial killers and wild psychological damage characters. This is a good one. Stars the guy who directed it. I would like to see this get a remaster, maybe some feedback, some context to this film, but Victims 1982 by Paul Vorno. Good stuff if you're into this. Like, if you're into that sleazy stuff, like even, what would I think, like Blood Rage 1979 kind of has the same vein. Anything where these psychological characters just kind of snap. The Fan from 1981. There's a lot of them. And especially in the 70s and 80s. There's tons of them. But this is a pretty solid one that I've never seen. Naked Massacre is another one, which is pretty good. So yeah, there's another one. Or Born for Hell. That's the AKA title. Now we're going to talk about Victims. And but you're saying, Dave, I know you're old. I know you make a lot of mistakes, but there can't be two Victims. What are you talking about? You just reviewed Victims. Yes, there is a second movie from 1982 called Victims. This one's a TV movie, though. And in the great vein of TV movies from the early 80s, like Terror Among Us, which was kind of a movie that focused on rape. I noticed so many TV movies from the early 80s focus on like rape or rape revenge kind of movies. And they all feel like a Lifetime kind of bend to them. But I feel like a lot of them come across as like feminist movies. But at the same time, they do have this dark, gritty nature or anything like this. They're very like police procedural at times or case study things. But this one is a little different. So what we have here is this woman who is unfortunately raped by this creep, and she's asked to go to a police lineup to identify the killer or the rapist, and Howard Hessman. And she goes, and there's a room full of women, like 5 other women in there. And they're like, what the hell's going on? The cop obviously sees, like, this is not supposed to happen, but he doesn't give a shit and he leaves like a jackass. And come to find out, they start talking about what happened to them and then whatnot. And then after they've identified the person, they all say, who'd you identify? 555. So this goes to court, and this rapist rapes 6 women, at least. And he gets to go because there was collusion in the back. So this obviously upsets all these women, especially our lead here, who seems to be a really intelligent, like smart business kind of woman. She has like 2 jobs. She has a boyfriend. She's very stable. And there's a great speech that she has. She says, I used to think that I did all right for being a businesswoman, had my head together, thought I was so sophisticated. And then after that I was attacked. I lost my humanity. I just cried, And you're like, Jesus Christ, that feels so real. It feels real. Like you think, and I can't relate to being raped, and I can't relate to being a woman, and I can't relate to a woman being raped, but I feel horrible, what I mean? I can't say that has ever happened to me, but like, you've ever like been in that situation where you think like, yeah, I got all my shit together, I'm perfectly set, I'm perfectly fine, and then something just comes and crashes you down, and you're just sitting there like, you're like, I can't believe that I'm this weak. I can't believe that this happened to me. And she's just like, my humanity was taken from me, and you're like, you're so on her side. And they decided to do a whole ladies club active ladies club or rape squad, or even what was that one, Gun for Jennifer kind of style thing. Not as extreme as a Gun for Jennifer, not as extreme as ladies club or Active Vengeance, aka Rape Squad, not as extreme as those movies. All really great films too. What they do is they just kind of get together and say, well, we're going to start watching this creep. And we're going to catch him and call the cops because the guy dresses up as a security guard and goes around and rapes him. But so what we have here is a really good, TV kind of thriller movie where these women all bond together and try to catch this rapist. And the ending is dark. The ending isn't your, slap on the wrist night warning or Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker, which I love that movie. But at the end of that movie where they're just like, he got to go, and that title comes across, you think that might happen, something like that. And it's like, they're gonna bitch out? They do not bitch out. They just. Unfortunately, the law doesn't always work for the right people. You know what I mean? Sometimes it doesn't. Probably most of the time, unfortunately. Innocent people get in trouble, or people that are justified in their... I can't believe I say justified in their revenge. But sometimes you feel like they are justified in their revenge. And, the bad people walk and the good people don't. So, this is a really good movie. Victims, 1982. TV movie, not to be confused with Victims 1982, not a TV movie. Both really good, both completely different. Interesting takes on these this thing, because like Victims too, right? You think about it. The first movie, he's a victim. The people he's attacking are victims. Everybody's a fucking victim. This one here, the TV movie, the way the DA talks to her, I think she's a DA. And she says, well, these are victims. But he's like, now you're making him a victim because you're stalking him and doing these things. And you're just like, what she really should have done if she would have went by it. Nowadays, you can't do that shit because everybody has these cameras on the things. But to fuck with this guy, she should have just kept flattening his tires like every month so he'd be late to work every month, destroying his car so like eventually he'd get fired. And then just start like putting flyers all around his work and all around his neighborhood that he's a rapist and everything like that. Just printing them off and throwing them everywhere. Yeah, people might not believe it, but it'll ruin his reputation enough they'll have to move. And then just find out where he moved to keep doing it. Ruin this guy's fucking life. Now, I'm not saying if somebody raped you, you should do that. But I'm not saying you shouldn't. So anyways, Victims and Victims, 1982. Surprised by both of them, honestly. Good stuff. Alright, next up is the Patreon pick, and this is Ghost World from 2001. Surprised I never saw Ghost World. Damn shame. Same director as Art School Confidential and Bad Santa. Two movies I love. And I haven't seen Ghost World. I'm talking about, like, I've seen Art School Confidential. That's like his B movie compared to Ghost World. Ghost World's the popular one. Criterion put on Ghost World. This has, Scarlett Johansson and, oh my god, I can't remember, Thora Birch and Steve Buscemi, one of the greatest of all time. Knocking over stuff here. But I absolutely love Steve Buscemi. Steve Buscemi is so good in this movie. Oh man, this is one of this humor that this director, he did Crumb too, does, is such a dark, like, mean-spirited humor, but zany and quirky all at the same time. They are so funny. I do not know how to explain it, but there's a lot of sarcasm and satire and criticism of, like, things like that. Elena Douglas is in here as well, but okay. So Scarlett Johansson and Thora Birch are best friends. They just graduated from high school and they're going to college and things like that. Thora Birch has to take a summer class on art, which watching this and watching how like this director is clearly like making fun of the art scene, I could see that he made an entire movie, Art School Confidential, about that, where basically, someone makes a hunk of shit and they're just like this, like, so for example, this is like a sculpture. It's like, you see, what this represents is that we can never break away from the things that hold us to this ground level, and we can't be free. And just people talking out of their ass, making a piece of shit and talking out of their ass, and everybody's like, yeah, that's so deep and interesting. And then, like, you'll have this amazingly, like, created, like, fantastic, like, portrait of somebody, and I'm like, it's so boring. It's so crappy. It's like, it's fucking hard to do. That was good. That's good. But, it's just like art is so subjective. And like that art class was just like, oh, so this whole scene basically inspired Art School Confidential. As well, I'm sure that he went to art school and he had to deal with all sorts of this stuff. And it paid off, at least at a comedy level for us, because it's fucking hilarious. And I see all these kind of humorous jokes that are in Art School Confidential here. So I just was cracking up hysterically through this movie. So Scarlett Johansson and Thora Birch. Thora Birch is like this just mean-spirited person who's never happy with anything, and she's always sarcastic, and nothing's good enough, and this whole system sucks, and she's miserable, and she's never going to find anybody because it's just like, she's got that attitude, right? You know, that person that is sarcastic and just always makes fun of everything and always has to just fucking shit on everything. But they're never really wrong, but at the same time, they're so negative all the time that it just drives you fucking insane. It just sucks your soul away. But she's fucking hilarious in this movie. But so her and Scarlett Johansson are best friends, and they do this horrible prank on Steve Buscemi, who is this, he leaves like a wanted ad out there where he says, hey, I saw you at this train and we had a connection, and leaves this ad out there. And they just had to play a prank on him and call him and tell him to meet him at this restaurant or something like that. And he shows up and they watch him and they're laughing at him. This is something that people would do in the early 2000s to each other, prank phone calls, shit like that. This is outdated, horrible thing that people used to do to each other, shit like that. So they show up and they kind of follow him home. And they realize this guy, you know, he lives in this apartment with this another character actor kind of guy that, you know, not as big as Buscemi, of course. And Thora Birch starts to get interested in him and goes up and buys some records from him and realizes this guy knows all about jazz and things like that. And they start this kind of relationship. It's not necessarily sexual, but there's some intrigue there, you know. And he's like a 40-year-old guy, and he starts hanging out with this high schooler. And, you know, it's awkward and weird at first, but they become kind of best friends while Scarlett Johansson and her kind of start to separate. They start to split apart as friends and things like that. And Thora Birch's just attitude, her mentality, it's just to never play along or never go with anything. Kind of keeps her from getting jobs, keeps her from, you know, bonding with her dad and Bob Boboland and all these people like that. So it's got a fantastic cast too. I'm probably forgetting a couple names that pop up in here, but you know, so it's just that weird kind of time frame when you're like a kid growing into an adult, and that awkward, like, pessimistic attitude that hopefully you kind of outgrow or you just learn to live with and keep your mouth shut kind of deal. But so there's all that going on at the same time. And of course, you know, Buscemi starts to have a relationship that she helped kind of nurture. And what happens to poor old Buscemi, he gets the short end of the stick in this movie, but it's kind of all around fucking up and kind of dirty in weird ways and stuff like that. Once you think the age and everything, like, ooh. But there is this really great moment where Buscemi is like, well, you like music? He's like, you know what? But I really don't like these people. Look, like, I hate these people. I don't want to be around these people that are like me. And I'm looking around and I'm like, you're a cool guy. He's like, am I? I collect records in my room. And you're like, that's the same thing with all this shit. Like, people are watching this channel. No offense to anybody, including myself. They're like, oh yeah, Mr. Parker's cool. Look at all the movies he has. It's like, am I cool? Like, is it cool? Like, come on. Like, yeah, like, like, you know, like, I'm just saying, it's not cool. Like, come on. Is having Godzilla versus the Sea Monster cool? Like, we think it's cool, but is anybody gonna think it's cool? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just but as an adult, you don't give a shit what's cool. You just do what you want. But it's just funny. Like, he has this big speech about basically dogging on himself and the other people that collect the records in this life and world. It's just, you know, self-hate in a way, or self, you know, kind of deal. But overall, I loved Ghost World. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. I thought it was expertly acted and just really well done. And I'll definitely watch it again. And I think that this type of humor, to me, is kind of like Todd Solondz, but less dark. Because his movies are really dark, but they have that streak of just like humor where I can't stop laughing, and that's similar to Ghost World or Art School Confidential or Bad Santa. Bad Santa is a little bit more approachable, I think, for more average day people, but I don't think that, you know, this is obviously a cult item and people love it for good reason, but I loved it. Great stuff. Check it out. All right, let's get in these questions, comments, and concerns. Ken Coakley. It's a big one. I have a lot to say about Trick or Treat because it's one of the only couple movies that featured a character that were metalheads. The other one was River's Edge, starring Keanu Reeves, who was really a metalhead. Anyway, back to Trick or Treat. The Sammy Kerr character was hard to cast. They really wanted a heavy metal singer, starting with Gene Simmons, Ozzy Osbourne, Dee Snider, Paul Stanley, Lawless. Lawless turned it down because he wanted Was to do the music, so they went outside the metal realm to cast an actor. Tony Fields wasn't an actor by trade. He was a dancer who appeared regularly on the show Solid Gold. He appeared in the Queen music video for Body Language at Freddie Mercury's request. He was also in Michael Jackson's Thriller and Beat It videos. He made his acting debut in 1985 film version of A Chorus Line. I remember hearing about a Solid Gold dancer being cast as a heavy metal singer. I was pretty upset when I saw the film. He actually got it. Until I saw the film. The The performance scene at the dance was amazing. I'm sure it was all practical choice since some of the things he had to do were physically demanding, and being a dancer must have prepared him for that. Some of the albums shown in the film were in my own record collection. All the albums he had were extreme metal albums. For instance, the Seven Churches album by Possessed was a precursor to black metal, and Megadeth and Exeter albums were thrash, while Sammy Kerr came across as a hair metal act. But he died at 38, so he likely played throughout the 70s like Kiss, Black Sabbath, and Judas Priest. And Kiss, who all appealed to thrash crowd like me, and the hair metal crowd. I love Gene Simmons as Eddie's friend and mentor, Nuke. He seemed to be a conduit between Eddie and Sammy. I wish they had fleshed out more about the relationship between Nuke and Eddie. Mark Price looked exactly like one of my friends from high school. The original choice for Eddie was Keanu Reeves. I got the soundtrack album when it came out. I was already a Fast Away fan. They started as a supergroup with Fast Eddie Clarke and the Motorhead from Motorhead on guitar, Pete Way from UFO on bass, and Jerry Shirley from Humble Pie on drums, and newcomer 19-year-old Dave King on vocals. Pete Way left before the first album came out in '83. They sounded like a heavier Led Zeppelin. Now on to Carve, the Slipmouth Woman. I watched it because of your review. The movie was intense, to say the least. It was also audacious to have a specter that killed children. At least Freddy Krueger killed 30-year-old teenagers. Also, the level of physical abuse the kids took from their mothers made me sick to my stomach. My mother slapped me every time I acted up. She didn't abuse me. She had mental illness. Anyway, the coughing fit reminded me of saying Candyman 5 times in the mirror. Persona wasn't the best film in the collection, but it was interesting. I got the kids who were bullied using the mask as a defense mechanism. I was bullied until I grew my long hair and wore denim and leather. I did it because I joined a heavy metal clique, and that was just us trying to look like bikers. The story was realistic in that teen culture is a monkey see, monkey do society. We're at a point where nonconformity is conformity, and conformity is now nonconformity. The reason I didn't get bullied anymore was because I was part of a 14-person clique. There's strength in numbers. I've watched The Colossus of New York throughout the years. I've always liked Ross Martin, who later became a TV star by co-starring on the 60s TV show Wild Wild West as Artemis Gordon. Martin died very young. Which brings me to my last point. The horror community was dealt a severe blow by the passing of Tony Todd. I met him a few times at the conventions and he was really cool. He was also tall. When I first met him, he noticed my Ramones shirt. He liked the Ramones a lot. Every time I saw him, he mentioned my liking the Ramones as a way of letting me know that he remembered me. About 20 years ago, there has been rumors of Phantasm reboot with him as a tall man and Doug Fash as Michael. Angus Scrimm gave his approval, and while I don't like reboots or remakes, I like the idea. He was a tall man, he had a great voice, especially when he lowered his voice like Candyman. His passing hit me really hard. R.I.P. Tony, you are loved by horror fans everywhere. Yeah, Tony Todd was the shit, man. Wish I would have got to meet him, loved his movies. And one performance he gave that was underrated was Sushi Girl. The way you see like Tony Todd think and talk, like he's like, oh, like he's just good. He's an actor that you can think. You see him think every word he says, which is rare. And rare in a person, too, but I've seen a couple. Optimus Weg. Man, I'm hella curious to hear your thoughts on Heretic. You should definitely check it out. 2024 has dropped some great horror films on us, in my humble opinion. I agree. Angela150, I'm always happy when I see your new video. You make my day better. Great reviews as always. I love Trick or Treat. Must rewatch it again. Hope you'll like Talk to Me. Love everything from 1986 year. Stay well and happy. Thank you. Jay Wolfel, director of Beyond Dream's Door. Good film. Colossus of New York is a gem. It always needs and deserves someone to point it out as worth finding and watching. Thanks, Mr. Parker, for doing so. Thank you for doing the interview years ago, and thanks for making movies. What the flick? Man, I got to meet Sam and Ted Raimi at a HorrorCon. It was the best con experience I've had. Next to seeing you at Cinema Wasteland, of course. I got to talk to him for about 15 minutes holding up the massive line because I grew up an hour away from where he grew up. And he was shocked when I told him my top 3 favorites of his are Evil, Dead, Darkman, and The Gift. He said, never hears The Gift as a favorite. I love fucking Raimi. Seems like a cool guy. Explosive Action. I don't always comment, but I always watch. Thanks for the Roger Corman length updates. Thank you. Delos 5. What a hottie. Thank you. Julius. If we are watching Mr. Parker Weekly, we are all crazy movie fanatics in the family. Then indeed. Preacher Lambella. I don't actually watch these weekly. I usually save a few so I can watch several in a row. Thank you. Sleaze Fiend. Red Shirt Pictures' first release was documentary After Effects. Thank you. And I did watch that and I did review it. Completely forgot. Probably mentioned it in the review. This is a new label. And then I forgot. Way Up Dude. He gives like thumbs up. Thank you. Nick Mua. I have, of course, been accustomed to Vinegar Syndrome dinging up some rare film gems. Still, I am surprised to see Fear.com in their lineup. While it isn't the best of the spooks on the internet films, it isn't the worst either. Not by a long shot. Some of the crap passing for internet horror I've seen. Yikes. I hope Vinegar Syndrome tackles 1999's Clown at Midnight, featuring James Duvall, Margaret Kidder, and Christopher Plummer someday soon. The hysteria continue guys sure seem to like it. I'm sure I will enjoy Blood Time, even if the monster looks hokey. With the late great James Earl Jones as one of the leads, how bad can it be, right? Yeah. Questions. What's the worst, most laughable, most unconvincing monster critter you've seen on the big screen? For me, it's the Tabanga the Vengeful Tree and From Hell It Came, without a shadow of a doubt. And yes, I am aware of Tabanga-inspired Marvel's Groot, but would Vin Diesel enjoy this movie? I asked you. I've heard that's a bad monster. Joe Dante always points out that being a horrible monster. So many bad monsters. Octoman looks like shit. Octoman's pretty bad. Maybe Octoman, or it's got to be one of those old Corman cheap monsters that I've seen. There's just some bad... Oh, fuck, man, I just mentioned it today. Manowar. The Stingray. William Grafé movie. That monster looks pretty bad. Number 2, besides the ruins and Midnight... There's so much... The monster in Night of Blood Beast is dog shit. Besides the ruins and Midnight Kiss, of course, have you seen any Carter Smith's other films? If so, what did you think of them? I don't think I have. You'd have to remind me. I hope the election craze doesn't get too much out of hand over there in the US of A. My prayers and thoughts are with you. All, and my dad's 2 brothers and their families who live in Michigan, I think. Take care. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. No comment on the election shit. Don't talk about it anymore. Election's over. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm tired of them damn ads. But yeah, let's get into the update here. First up, we have Golden Harvest Volume 1 Supernatural Shockers. Had to pick this up, even though I have a couple of these movies already. We got Dr. Vampire and Robotrix, which was released by 88 Films in a deluxe edition. Erotic Ghost Story 2 and 3. And Sex and Zen and Erotic Ghost Story 1. I think I've already seen Erotic Ghost Story. I think I have that. So yeah, I picked this up for a lot of them on here. But yeah, pretty cool. It's nice to see that these are getting releases stateside. New audio commentaries, new interviews. So yeah, there we go. They're also putting out a second edition that is more like action oriented, but I wanted to pick up the kind of horror ones, horror oriented. It looks like we got a bunch of Cat 3 titles here. All of them are probably Cat 3. I know Robotrix is a wild fucking movie, guys. Highly recommended. But yeah, let's get out of here. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.